Hello, as most of you already know, my name is Micah T. I am the CEO of Bellator, a shareholder of Metaterra, and I'm here in Cyprus in the offices of Miracle Cash and More, an office that I first met you in 3.5 years ago now. And at that point, we were just a kind of a small company in Cyprus
A small company with big ambitions.
with big ambitions. And so, being here for 3.5 years, we've together experienced the changes. But I think, today or this last 7 days is really, to me, the biggest change that I've experienced in this company. And it's surreal, I have to admit, having Russell Gerson here, who I met this week. We had some great conversations throughout the week. And of course, Stephen Norris, you're here.
Thank you.
And welcome to Cyprus. I've been myself here 4 years now, so I didn't know anything about Cyprus before I came here. You guys arrived on the 27th. We had an incredible annual party for Miracle Cash and More in Metaterra. Doug, you were here. We had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. It was a great night. And so I just wanted to, have the community of Bellator meet you too. They've met you already, Doug, but you'll be obviously filling in some here. But I wanted to hear a little bit from you, Stephen, that, coming here, it's maybe, I don't know if that's a common occurrence in your life, coming to a small island to talk to a company that has the aspirations of being a unicorn. What has this experience been for you?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. And it's been a wonderful week of meetings and discussions. I think productive. I've joined a couple of months ago the advisory board of Metaterra, and it's been a privilege to understand its business strategy and see how it is distinguishing itself in the community. We're on a transition now between the way I look at old world finance and what will become next generation finance, which will be some combination of more technology and married in some manner with traditional finance. So it's exciting to be a part of that. In addition, we've got some unique opportunities collectively. And I manage a company called Cedar Capital, and we're discussing effectively a venture with Metaterra and with Wall Street Capital Partners. So we're excited to conclude that. Number of interesting things going on. I think more will come about by virtue of that. So I've had a good week. I'm looking forward only slightly having to fly back to the States tomorrow, but in any event, it's been a wonderful time.
Awesome. It's amazing.
Steven, I've read a lot about you, and I can only learn so much from what I've read, and I know that there's probably 100 times bigger of what I've read. But I would really like you to share your experience and your the stuff that you've done in the past, and maybe without giving out any names of companies, just giving some simple, simple events that happened in your professional experience, because it related a lot to me and meant a lot to me, especially last night at the mill. It gave me other angles to look at. So if you could just touch bases on those.
I'd be happy. I had the privilege when I was younger I guess everyone has the privilege of being younger at some point in their life. I found that it evaporates, but we were on the vanguard of setting up private equity firms. In fact, when we started the Carlyle Group, the term private equity didn't exist. You either fell into the basket of being a LBO shop, a KKR type buyer, or you were a venture capitalist, you were Kleiner Perkins, or at least those were the companies that you aspired to emulate. We were a bit different because we started our firm in Washington and we had a bit more of a political bent. We started doing deals, for example, in the defense business, which were to that time unusual for private equity firms. They were great deals because by and large they were what we call foreign military sales deals, which effectively you were financing the sales of part of the U.S. government in the defense industry. And whether it was in those days General Dynamics tanks, and we're actually working today on an acquisition of a set of systems that will effectively empower missile defense. So, and they're exciting and they're relevant and they're timely. Anecdotally, we've seen lots of different things, and I will use one story just as a kind of way of thinking about life. When we started, we had bought a book distribution company called Baker and Taylor. It was a kind of non-eventful acquisition. We bought it because they were having, interestingly enough, systems problems. As you might imagine, moving books around is complicated, and they're heavy, and they are in different shapes. And so having systems that work efficiently was complicated, and they had problems, and effectively took over the firm to fix those. We brought an executive who I'd known it when I worked years ago at Marriott to take over. And we were approached by someone saying they'd like to, if they could, license our book list. And being private equity investors, we thought, well, if that's another source of cash, we could pay down debt quicker, we could make more money, so why not take a look? And so we licensed our book list to a young man who was most of the time late in payments, but eventually came along. And we had no idea what he was building, but he was building a company that enabled people to buy books over the internet. And you might imagine that company is now a very large company called Amazon. But when we were doing that deal all those years ago, we had no idea where it was all going. We just knew we sat in the kind of crease between new finance and old finance and where the world might be going and where it come from. And Metaterra, interestingly enough, is sort of in the same position. I think that I've now had enough discussions with really sophisticated managers and engineers here that I get a pretty good feel for exactly what you're trying to do. But I suspect that the average Wall Street executive needs some education. And so that in itself is exciting to see how a company like this grows and the things that it can influence and touch. So for me, being on the advisory board is a privilege, and I look forward to it, continuing to work with all of you. But effectively, in the world we live in today, you can take a business as far as you can dream and as far as you can build relationships, raise capital. And I think Metaterra is well positioned for all of those things.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. So I wanted to move over to you really quick. We have a few things to cover, but you're officially now joining the advisory board as well. And you were here with all of us. Is there anything that you like to share about what it was like to be around, Hakan and Doug and go over these plans that we have?
Well, first of all,
and for people to know, Russell's past and who he is, would be great.
sure. So first of all, thank you very much. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you for
privilege for us.
your hospitality, but it has been an eye-opening experience seeing what Metaterra is doing, what you're doing with Miracle Pay. I'll go back to Steve for a second before I'll talk a little bit about myself. I spent 40 years initially as a banker and an investment banker, but then I got into what I would describe as high-level executive recruiting and corporate development for the finance industry, which would include investment banking, the hedge fund, venture capital, private equity community. And in my role, and I ran a couple of companies, I had the opportunity to see many types of businesses and many people. I've been involved with some of the most senior people and some of the more important companies in the private equity, investment banking, hedge fund arena. Steve and I have known each other for about 12 years. And when I first met Steve, I had an opportunity to talk to his co-founder, David Rubenstein, Steve started the Carlyle Group coming out of Marriott, and he recruited David. And before I entered into my partnership with Steve, I asked David, I said, well, tell me about Steve. And he said, well, Steve is probably the most intelligent, most creative financier in the industry. And the reason the Carlyle Group is the way where it is today is because of Steve and his concept. And so when I had an opportunity to partner with Steve, it was a great privilege. And to see Steve's perspectives and see his viewpoints. He mentioned the one transaction with Jeff Bezos, but he's been involved in some of the bigger transactions, creating over the years trillions of dollars of wealth. And that'll bring me back to Metaterra and what you're doing here. And in discussions with Steve and using my own ability to sort of intuit, where opportunities are, what you're doing with Miracle Pay and the product and the service you're providing, I could easily see, and again, Steve and I have had these conversations, a company that will transform the financial industry. I remember back when I first had an opportunity, I ended up about 3 or 4 years ago going to Europe and I forgot my wallet.
Right.
And I was like, wow, what am I going to do? I have no credit cards. What am I going to do? Well, I was in Europe for 2 weeks. Using Apple Pay, I was able to use my phone and basically get everything I needed. I see what you're doing is transformational in the same way that Apple Pay was, in terms of what Miracle Pay is going to do, not just in terms of payments, but in terms of the new product you're going to be developing with credit and how that's going to transform how people finance their lives. I would not be surprised, and again, Steve's created trillions of dollars of value in his career, that this becomes not just a unicorn, but a massively large company. And so it's a real honor and a pleasure for me to participate and to be asked to give my advice on an advisory board.
Well, that's a privilege for us, and it's great to, we've been working for years, and it is a complicated business. And one thing that Stephen said is you've got to make it simple. You've got to make it simple for the basic person to understand what it is. And I said, well, Steve, it is a complex product, so that's been a challenge, but as the shift of crypto is accelerated now, I think our lives of making it simple is also getting to a much easier level. Having people like yourselves joining also opens the path for us of being able to send out simple messages about the product and getting those messages to the right place. So I agree with you. That's the status that Metaterra is in, and with all these people, and I thank our chairman Douglas Anderson for actually bringing these people into Metaterra and showing them who we are, because you can have the best product on the planet. If you can't get it to where it needs to get, there are a lot of projects that have failed because they didn't find the opportunity of being at the right place with the right people at the right time. But we now have got all that. So that's something that gives me immense confidence.
It's also probably worth your discussion a little bit about the opportunities that you have with your systems to be really on the vanguard of what I would call the digitalization of real assets. It's exciting because it opens up a whole new source of capital and a new take on valuations, a new take on your investor base. We're working with Doug now on a project that he has to finance and create an airport in Europe, which I understand to be the first major airport development since the Second World War in Europe. And we've been exploring that with a number of political sources, as you might imagine. Financing a major infrastructure facility will require that, but also thinking very carefully about how we might be able to use some kind of digitalization, asset-backed security to create and open that new market. So you have the back end through Metaterra to make that realistic and possible. And I think that's something that's really worth focusing on and emphasizing. Beyond that, I think there's so many things that can be done. There are opportunities in the commodity space. There's opportunities in the oil space. There's opportunities in a number of areas where the kind of digital technology that you've invented will be unique, and I think open up and allow people to explore new ways of financing old commodities. And in itself could be quite interesting.
I mean, talking about the political meetings that are being set up, I know that you're meeting on the 19th of January, I think, with the Prime Minister of Romania.
Right.
And I know that Stephen Norris is cooking.
Well, we're actively working on setting up an arrangement to have Doug, on behalf of the airport authority, really, meet with the important political people, particularly in France, but to hopefully include, we're working on the Prime Minister, and ultimately we think to go to the President of France, Macron, and see if we can get his backing, and therefore the backing of Brussels and the European Union, to get behind the financing of this airport. And that will put everyone in a uniquely different position. There's no good reason why politicians would refuse to get behind this kind of a project. So we're hoping that we can make a compelling case to get behind it early and help it happen.
That's great. So we've been talking about, and I don't know if we're revealing this, but there's a deal in the works in regards to RWA, or we're.
I want to get there,
Yeah.
and I want to make that announcement, but I would like to quickly go through the status of Metaterra and what's happening with its listing in a very, a simple way. And I'd like to do that on the board.
Okay.
So where we are with Metaterra. So if you put our holding company here, okay, we've already got Miracle Pay, and this whole setup is owned 100% by Metaterra. And currently there's deals that we've announced, and we've already signed deals that we're preparing ourselves to announce. But for 2026, we have a KPI that we will have a minimum of 150K merchants. Okay, this itself puts Metaterra into a unicorn, and you can do the numbers.
Huge.
Right? And as you know, we have a signed Ingenico contract. We have a signed
Exclusive.
tax contract. Yes, and we have Shopify, and we've got NCR.
This
and
represents
Verifone.
the majority of POS transactions on the planet.
So Miracle Pay is a payment gateway, and today we're by far ahead than any company out there. We're actually awarded, and I can't give the name of the award, but very soon there will be an announcement of an award of Miracle Pay being the best crypto payment gateway of Europe. So that's coming, and that really put me into tears when I saw it, and that will be announced very soon. But we didn't stop with Miracle Pay being a payment gateway. So we have a second leg, which is our score company. And our score company is building a score, which is not only a project now, it's a project that the product is nearly finished, and we go live end of April 2026. And there we've got Paul Randall, one of a top data analytic guy, a top CEO of working with credit bureaus for years. This score is not only coming to enhance Miracle Pay, but it's coming to generate revenue from providing scoring, Web3 scoring, bringing the unbanked into the banked for financial institutions globally.
These scores are extremely valuable commodities.
And Russell, we were discussing, and you was talking about, it's not only an EBITDA of a company, data actually makes a big difference in the multiplier of valuation.
Well, my understanding, having spent quite a bit of time in the fintech area over the last 4 or 5 years, is that data gets the highest multiple of any of these businesses. I had a conversation. I met Elon Musk once, and when I spoke to Elon Musk, I spoke about Tesla. He says, "We're as much in the car business as we are on the data business. The data we collect in the cars is some of the most valuable part of the valuation of the company." So this, I think, is arguably one of the most important parts of the Metaterra universe.
Right. So Metaterra owns 90% of this company, and 10% is allocated for the C-level management team with certain KPIs and really pushed to the exit incentive. And our third leg is our Web3 world, and our Web3 world is our chain, is our wallet, is our DEX, is our collateralized lending borrowing, is lottery. All this that we're building, that's coming in, Metaterra owns 100%.
There's a big data play there as well.
Yes. Yeah, and all these new functions that we're adding onto this chain that we have is just going to create more and more transactions. And in today's world, it's the number of transactions that really give the value to the chain. In this chain, we're really focusing on our launchpad, and I pull this as a fourth leg as RWA. This is something that we really think we know is the future, because the future of finance is going to be tokenization. It's going to be asset-backed, real-world asset-backed tokenization. So having the fact of building this world and having a launchpad there with the experience and knowledge we have to date, and this is 100% again owned by Metaterra. We're looking, that's where the airport project comes in. That's where with all these muscles that we've built, we're talking about real world assets such as oil-backed token projects that is going to happen, but we have everything ready today. We have the people that can bring us there, and that's something that will be obviously released in more detail in another call. Today, the reason I put this up there is for me happily and being a privilege to announce that Metaterra will have a fifth leg, and it's a partnership of a company called Wall Street Capital Partners. You want to complete the name?
Asset Strategies.
Asset Strategies. So Metaterra, Wall Street Capital Partners, and Cedar are starting a partnership, and that's why Steve Norris and Russell has been here. I think, first of all, to understand, it's one thing different of being on an advisory board with somebody, and it's completely different to be partners with somebody. Is there anything that we can all bring to the table and, connect and create something bigger? And that's where that's what we've decided. And as I said, it's a privilege to announce this. So this is Metaterra, and that's what's going to the OTC market. We did talk about, we're in the last 30, 45 days. I know everything is going fantastic there. You can touch bases in a couple of sentences. But that's what we're bringing to the market. And where are we, and what do you think that brings to the market?
So I think this kind of all grew out of the extraordinary opportunity to tokenize the only privately held and one of the largest capital airports in Europe. The last airport that was built in Romania was by the Germans in World War II. So this is, we're going from a 14 million capacity airport to a 40 million capacity airport. We're going from zero cargo to 1 million tons of cargo. And so this will be effectively the largest real world asset ever tokenized. That moniker will be huge in terms of Metaterra, in terms of Wall Street Capital being involved in it as well. What happened from there, a trend on Wall Street has been some of the larger sovereign funds and other huge hedge funds to reevaluate their portfolios and to see what they can liquidate or leverage from. And we never had the tokenization tools before, and now we do. Wall Street Capital, we have skills in valuing assets. We have skills in selling portfolio assets into the secondary market. That's standard corporate finance, but no one's ever applied tokenization to that. And what that does is it opens up huge. So we're really looking at potentially doing the largest secondary market transaction in the world, the first tokenization of secondary assets.
And I really want to talk about this, of what it really is. But when you was talking about the airport, it's not only tokenization. I would like to say that it actually has a big effect on Miracle Pay as well.
Yeah, of course, because the entire airport, the city that surrounds it and supports it, all the systems will be integrated with these tokenization or these payment systems from beginning to end.
So it's basically be a model for future platforms around the world.
Exactly.
You're going to be able to do this from the ground up.
Yeah.
Let me make a comment about tokenization, which Steve actually made the comment, so I'll paraphrase from him from the presentation that your engineers gave the other day. When you look at the capital markets, you know, the traditional sources are the individual investors, the family offices, the sovereigns, you know, the traditional capital markets. This, from what I understand from your engineers and talking to Steve the other day, this opens up trillions of dollars of additional financing outside the traditional capital markets, which I forgot the number, it was a huge number. It was multiple trillions of dollars that would not be normally accessible by the traditional capital markets.
Right.
Yeah, it's really a paradigm shift in corporate finance. It's fintech really starting to come into its own.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you know, there's thousands of people who are watching this that have been with us, you know, for over 3 years, you know, coming in over time. And, you know, they've been purchasing the digital products from us, you know, carrying the company to this stage. And I know that you challenged me a little bit before Christmas in regards to what we were doing with the Miracle Pay node. And, you know, we've been sort of like this little bit where you were pushing for an end on the first. And I did get you to allow us to go until the 10th. So I want to say I appreciate that. And I know that the community appreciates it. There's some thoughts around that. and its economics involved.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that we're going to go into a phase that's less impressive because our credibility is growing so much. But what they've been getting from us.
I mean, I didn't really understand or appreciate. This has been kind of there's an evolution and this was a revolutionary change in thinking in my mind once I started to understand this, and I realized how undervalued this is. And that's kind of, I don't know, from a banker's perspective, it's irresponsible to leave so much on the table. So my instincts were, look, we need to shut this down and revalue this thing because it's way undervalued. But it's also fair. People that have been with you a long time don't pull the rug out from under them, and ride it along.
It speaks to that, the value is when you're early, you get more.
Yeah.
And now that the credibility is increasing, of course, we need to go to the next stage.
Yeah.
So the 10th is the official date where that particular offering ends as far as the Miracle Pay node, that compensation plan on the Miracle Pay node, but maybe it gets replaced with something that's also exciting.
Maybe. So just to add on, so underneath Metaterra, Metaterra also owns 65% of Bellator, so that will be going into Bellator as well. So I'll come and sit, and I want finally to go into a bit about what this company is going to be doing.
Sure.
So finally, as I said, it is a privilege to announce this partnership with Multi Capital and Cedar. I know what it is, we know what it is, but in a nutshell, what is, just so people understand, what is this business really going to be focusing on?
So what you have are there's kind of a shift on Wall Street with a lot of the sovereign funds, family offices, large funds that have portfolios, and they're looking at these 8-10 year portfolio lifespans, and a lot of them come towards an end, and they want to liquidate some of the assets inside of there. And so what that's called is the secondary market. And Wall Street Capital Partners is very skilled at being able to value those assets, where you bring them to sell them, and recommendations and
Well, I
things
guess
like
it's
that.
very easy to sell because it has a track record. Of,
Well, yeah.
It's known to what it is.
The traditional private equity model, generally speaking, known as that some group of skilled people, or maybe some new kids who had a very good ability to sell themselves to potential investors, come together and say, we're going to raise a fund of money and go and buy assets. They could be focused in particular areas, or they could be generalists. And when we set up Carlyle, it was early enough that there really wasn't that degree of differentiation at the time. And we were fortunate in that we were able to buy assets when we thought they made sense. And that is good prices, more importantly, or as importantly as a good price, is managed by outstanding teams. Today, that model is still, generally speaking, exists, and people are raising a lot of capital around it. At the same time, the so-called secondary market has grown up to enable people who are holding portfolios, and it could be sovereign wealth funds, it could be the California Public Pension Fund, for example. CalPERS has done a major transaction. They've done a major transaction with the Singapore Investment Authority, and a number of other family offices who have holding assets have turned to the secondary market to sell assets. It might just be because they think it's a good time to sell, or it might be because they want to diversify their holdings, or it might be that they have identified other opportunities. And so the secondary market enables a category of investors to take over those portfolios. They're more advantageous than a traditional private equity fund, perhaps, in that the management's identified, the portfolio that you're buying into is identified, it's not a blind pool, and it enables you to redeploy capital in areas that might be more advantageous. For example, the Yale pension fund was restructuring its portfolio holdings to modernize it to some extent, and they turned to a secondary transaction. So there's a very big market. There's 2 or 3 major buyers of such positions, and then any number of family offices, particularly in the States, but also in Europe, that are looking for these kinds of opportunities.
So one of the side benefits of this kind of resurgence of this kind of financing is the exposure you have to those clients who also happen to have assets that they haven't traditionally looked at as being something that they could leverage from. And so with tokenization, this opens those assets up. And so we can approach those companies, and that's why we partnered.
And I think the good thing of what we have been discussing yesterday as well is for us, we're coming in as a partner into something that's been cooking for a couple of years, and we're talking about 6 months from today to be in a position to start selling into the secondary market.
Yeah, and it's
And that's,
we
you don't
simply
get that with a business, because I've been, not as long as you and not as many as you, but I know how long it takes to start being in the position of selling and being in the position and coming into a company that will bring you to 6 months revenue is something very exciting. At the same time, that company leading and opening doors of the mega shift of tokenization and allowing us to sit in front of the right people, it's just both.
timing is
It builds
perfect.
to
Yeah.
a kind of crescendo. In our business, generally speaking, you have to have a feel for what is doable and when. And this, in my mind, has been now for 5 or 6, 7 months, actually back toward almost to the first of the last year. These mega trends are such that the timing is right, and there's a lot of capital looking for a home that's differentiated or highly correlated with other holdings that they already have. So that's in a nutshell.
I'll make an interesting, I think, an important comment here. Steve has probably close to 50 years of knowledge and
Not
expertise.
just because I'm old.
But,
Unfortunately.
but as I mentioned before, he's been involved in some of the most important transactions in the history of the modern modern financial world, including creating the Carlyle Group. What's really exciting to me as an outsider and as an advisor to Metaterra and also an advisor to Steve is the ability to marry that expertise, that knowledge, and some very specific transactions that Steve has been working on now for 5 years with the expertise that Metaterra has in tokenization and Doug's knowledge, expertise, and track record
Secondary market.
is really exciting.
It's
exciting.
fits.
And I'm putting my corporate development headhunter hat on, being one of the top people in that business for many years. It's very rare when you see all those things come together. And if you execute properly, if we execute properly, we will create an incredibly large and significant and important company.
I have one question, because you mentioned that you saw Score as one of the biggest entities. So how does that compare to this division that we're talking about?
It's different. I mean, that's a totally different product. I mean, if you look at traditional credit scoring and how consumers and businesses financed their activities, particularly consumers, they relied on the 3 credit reporting agencies in the United States, at least, and I think
Experian,
and Equifax. This is a whole new way of looking at credit, taking in this whole new generation of people that are in the crypto world. That will be transformative.
It's the same shift of credit card to crypto on payment. It's the same shift from traditional score to Web3 score. It's all coming in parallel at the same time.
Exactly.
And what does Ford Motor Company value a client, client acquisition data?
As I mentioned when I mentioned the Elon Musk comment,
1,500, 2,000?
Yeah,
or
easy.
a bank.
Barclays, the cost of acquiring a new customer for Barclays Bank, they said, is £2,000.
Okay.
So you can imagine by capturing this group, hundreds of millions of people,
Incredibly valuable.
maybe billions of people worldwide,
Yeah.
you can put the multiple on that and imagine what that might
Yeah.
be. So there are a lot of people that are going to be attempting to do this, but I think that Metaterra and where you are, you have a leg up, you have a leading position, and if you execute properly, you'll be the market driver in this sector.
I just want to say a last thing with, and I won't give a name, and I won't give a number, so I think that'll be okay with Stephen Norris. The secondary market, am I right to say that the secondary market project that is being worked on at the moment is the largest secondary market deal ever done before?
Just the standard corporate
can I
finance
say
one.
that?
Yes, that's
By a multiple.
yeah.
And the deal that's envisioned in tokenization in a particular
eclipse that.
sector
Is the largest
will
by
be
far.
It would
one of the
eclipse
largest.
that. It would eclipse that. Yeah.
So, gentlemen, I would like to say that it was an honor, privilege to see you here, having your valuable time spent with us in Cyprus, and getting to a position to, having yourselves on the advisory board as well, but actually becoming partners in business as well has been my honor and privilege, and I'll thank you, and I'll thank our chairman, and I know Micah's very excited about this. So
I would say just on behalf of maybe 15 to 20,000 people who stand to benefit from what's happening here, and that you guys are part of this. Thank you on behalf of all of them. I'm sure we have thousands of people smiling on this content, so we're very, very excited about what's happening here. So thank you.
And I'd like for me to thank everyone for their hospitality the last week we've been here, and I look forward to seeing you soon, perhaps in New York. And there are a lot of things to be done over the coming, couple of months, and if we have to
A lot of hard work ahead of us.
roll up our sleeves and get going.
That's right.
And I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Metaterra, shaping the future of finance.